Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 80. As usual, I'm going to start off with a tune. Okay, that was Paddy's Resource, which was one of the regimental marches of the Royal Leinster Regiment, which is also known as the Royal Canadians, one of the grand old Southern Irish regiments of the British Army back in the day. How are you going, gentlemen? Adaman, how are you doing today?
Yeah, could you?
Yeah, not at all bad. And Mitch, how are you going?
Not doing too bad either.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. I'll probably start with Adaman, I guess, because Adaman's the senior dude here.
Yeah.
So, did you have a first subject you would like to bring up, Adaman?
Oh, well, there's been quite a lot happening, hasn't there? We've had more grooming stuff come out, which I'm not really sure I want to talk about. It's pretty grim.
I haven't seen that, Adaman. So, if you want to talk about it in like allowing for YouTube not being a free speech platform, because it's not, which is why, by the way, we are now on Odyssey too. You please do.
Well, I'm still kind of a little fuzzy on the details, so I don't want to go into it too much. But the Lotus Eaters did a pretty good piece on it, which people should probably check out.
Okay. Where was this, and vaguely what?
So this is they were mainly looking at Telford, because I think this is where there's basically been an inquiry or a study or some such. Telford seems to be the worst of the lot, even though we, heard from Rotherham and all that. I think when they were looking into it,
Oxford and all over the place.
Yeah, all over the place, literally all over the place. So I think one of the statistics that came out was that in Telford, out of a community of 1,000 men, 200 of them were suspects in grooming gang cases.
I take it when you say that you mean a ethnic community of
I mean, obviously they say Asian, but that's just obviously they just use that label to obfuscate. Away from saying specific South Asian or Pakistani or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, because Pakistani men are not the major people doing that. But yeah, all right.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been some. I mean, I'm sure some people have seen them. There's been some inquiries recently where sort of members of the public have been basically going and pillorying these places. Giving them a lot of crap. Ultimately, though, I mean, it doesn't result in anything. This stuff doesn't get covered by the news. It's a mess. It's a complete mess. I did see one funny thing actually, which kind of struck out at me, which is I forget her name. Is it Patsy Stevenson? who was the sort of red-headed sort of professional activist who I think she might have been the one who had herself photographed being arrested by the police at the candlelit vigil, like anti-police vigil a while ago.
Oh yeah.
And people were saying to her, well, why don't you organise a protest? And she was very quick to jump out and say, why don't you organise a protest? I don't organise them, I just attend them. And I've been seeing many such passive-aggressive outbursts from these people.
Yeah, it's okay to attack white guys. It's not okay to attack brown, beige, or black people.
Yeah, ultimately.
That's pretty much the truth of it. And of course, the Bias Brainwashing Corporation has no interest whatever in talking about grooming gangs. And I mean, let's be honest, grooming gangs is it's a lie. They're not grooming gangs. They're child rape gangs is what they are.
Yes.
But you're not allowed to say that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, even to the extent that the press will cover it, you can't actually use a euphemism like rape gangs. You have to say grooming because no one knows what you're talking about. If you say you have to always, explain it and go. I mean grooming gangs. That's what I'm talking about. I
don't know about you, Armand, but when I was a young man, grooming was like combing your hair and having a decent haircut and wearing a decent suit and this kind of stuff. It had nothing to do with sex.
Well, this is the thing. When they call it grooming, what they're also doing is they're implying that these young women were sort of, groomed.
Children.
Yeah, but this is the thing. What they're trying to do is they're trying to imply that there's some level of complicity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if it's very minor. But of course, that's not the case. A lot of these people, as you say, they're girls, and in quite a few of these cases as well, there was no complicity of any kind. There wasn't even any grooming. It was just straight up kidnapping and rape in some of these cases.
Well, I mean, look, how can you have, and we know this for a fact because even the British government has admitted it, that girls as young as 13 and 12 have been involved in this stuff. They're little girls, they're children. And if you stick them in a car and feed them drugs and alcohol and then take them away somewhere where they're gang raped, that is pedophilia apart from anything else.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, they know it's not grooming anyway because there was a case recently, maybe sometime within the last 6 months. I can't remember it exactly when, but it sort of popped up on people's radars because somewhere in, it might have been Manchester or a surrounding town, there was an instance where a video went out from a police car of a very young white woman falling out of a car early hours of the morning. Not early hours, but reasonably early-ish.
Sure.
Either drunk or drugged. And these Pakistani men jump out of the car and grab her and sort of very fiercely throw her back in the car, and then they all drive off. And the police didn't do anything about it, but then were later appealing for witnesses, even though it was their video footage that they were asking for witnesses.
Why didn't they just stop the car?
No idea. Well, we all know because they're more terrified of being called racist than anything. Because they're pathetic. But it's at the time, the police very quickly turned around and they said, "Oh, she came into the station like several days later and said she was fine, so case closed." And it's like, well, maybe she was. I wasn't there, but maybe she was very convincing. But like, if it's implied that this is grooming, then surely more questions should be asked than that. But they almost know it isn't at this point. They almost know it's.
I don't think there's any almost, and I think they absolutely know it's not, and they just don't want to deal with it.
I mean, I'm just trying to think now which part of Birmingham that was now. Like, I was thinking West Bromwich for a single second, but I'm now thinking West Bromwich has a lot of Polish people in, which if a Polish saw that sort of thing going on, they'd beat the shit out of those aforementioned Pakistanis. So definitely not West Bromwich. Like, it's not my take because it's not diverse enough. trying to think now.
I can't remember for the
But yeah.
life of me where it was, but it was.
It shouldn't
was-
happen. It should not happen anywhere in Britain or anywhere in England. I mean, that's just the truth of it. It just shouldn't happen.
No.
I mean, the main indictments for me on this are Telford. I mean, I've been to Telford in the past, and I didn't really think of it as a super diverse city, because back when I went there, I was just drinking pints there and getting like farmers stand off like the canals there.
Sure.
And secondly, I mean, like it's rather indictment back in certain areas of, like, say, Birmingham. It's not the British men that will beat the shit out of the Pakistanis for grooming. It will be the Polish guys, which is rather an indictment of itself that we have to rely upon Eastern European men to do our.
Oh,
that
that is an entire indictment. I mean, look, I grew up in a rough of Scots area of South London, but you know what? Like, there were gangs, there were the Richardsons, and just over the river there were the Crays, and all these people who were supposedly really violent and nasty. But you know what? Women and kids could walk around in almost perfect safety.
Yeah, it's like here in the West Midlands, there's a place called Tamworth, which that's pretty much where all the Birmingham, like all the white flight happened, and a lot of the Brummies who live there are the absolute worst, because they'll move there, which is like, because Tamworth's pretty white, but then they'll be the same ones who still shill for diversity and whatnot. So I can just imagine the few white guys left in Birmingham will just be as bad as the ones I mentioned about Tamworth.
Well, look, it's fairly noticeable that a lot of these children who are groomed, in inverted commas, come from single mother families and what have you, or sometimes even children's homes with no parents at all.
Yeah, I've also heard rumours. I could be wrong on this, but I've heard like some grooming gangs. Apparently, one thing some grooming gangs or rape gangs, whatever you want to call it, sometimes they'll have a white British girl with them, because they'll have that girl try and ensnare the teenage girls in.
Sure.
So then that way, because some of these gangs might think, oh well, if we just go as like a group, it tosses the girls off. Whereas if we get someone who's the same ethnicity as the girls we're trying to get, might ensnare them further. I mean, granted, I'm hearing rumours, and I could be wrong, but it won't surprise me that there are some people among us who are so traitorous, for want of a better word on that they'll do that sort of shit alongside the Pakistani grooming gangs.
Well, women are always highly suggestible and will go along with stuff like that. Not all women, there are exceptions, but many of them.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the whole situation is fucking bleak. It's awful.
It's disgusting. It's
and it's like
disgusting.
I kind of, a lot of us on the right as well, we sit around and we think, oh, as a movement, we need to move on. We need to talk about something else. But this situation, this issue just keeps popping up again and again and again.
Absolutely.
And we're all sort of incapable to do anything about it.
Well, the trouble is, Alvin, you know this as well as I do. Even speaking as we are now on YouTube, if we speak a little too clearly about this video, this stream will just get banned. You know that.
Yeah.
But this is why we have to kind of talk around it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do about it, to be honest. I don't.
It's not even just a case of being able to talk more clearly, though. It's also just a case that you need to take more channels of communication. You need to be able to. And the problem is, even if you let's say you had inherited a huge YouTube channel overnight. I mean, you look at someone like Sargon with all the pull he has. He can get a few things done, to his credit. A lot of people are quick to slag him off, but he had a huge petition to get the grooming gang report released.
Yes.
Which puts some pressure on the government, but obviously they screwed us over.
Which I supported, but
yeah. And but even then they sort of screwed us over. But it's what you're doing is whenever you're on YouTube, whether you're talking to 10 people or 10 million, you are kind of preaching to the choir. It's a bigger choir, but it's you know, you're still talking to people that are sympathetic anyway. What the right ultimately needs and will never get, sadly, is the ability to speak to the masses, to make, you know, TV programs, to make what was that TV show? Was it Free Girls on
Oh
BBC?
yeah.
To just make programs like that all the time on this issue.
Oh look, to like make up for the mainstream media, we would. I don't know how you can do that. You can't really, can you? But at the same time, I think we do need to bring it up, and like I bring it up as often as I can. And you obviously have this evening, and I mean, look, the more people who get to know about this, then hopefully the more pushback there will be against it. You know, with things like the so-called, in inverted commas, conservative leadership election going on at the moment, although I doubt it, but you know, I think they just want to avoid talking about it, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, well, the leadership election's another clusterfuck, isn't it? I mean, that's just. I mean, they're just removing any real choice we'd have over anything. You know, they are desperate to get that brown person in number 10.
Yeah,
They really are. Yeah, they are. But I reckon it will end up being a white woman. But whether that will be much better, I'm not sure.
The swimsuit model.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I have words to say about that woman in due course, but yeah. The swimsuit model who needs to lose at least 25 pounds, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's rather an indictment of the Tory leadership, but the two main contenders are Rishi Sunak and Penny, who both of them are pretty much on board with the idea of like digital IDs and akin to a Chinese social credit system. Not to mention, during this whole leadership election, I've not heard anything about mass immigration, bar that Kemi woman saying that she's anti, like pro Rwanda plan.
She wants to be one of the few, eh? Well, one of the not very few is more truthful, but there we go. But yeah, all right. Adam, and anything else to add to that?
What, to the leadership stuff or to the grooming?
No, to the grooming gang stuff.
No, I mean, it is. I mean, it's when I saw the people in there lambasting these inquiries in these halls, I had a little bit of a white pill, but it ultimately doesn't mean anything because you know those people in those rooms are doing a good job. You know, considering they're just like a bunch of normies, they're going out there and speaking about what they believe in, and they're doing it against the system that they know doesn't want to talk about this and doesn't want them talking about it. And that is pretty brave, but ultimately it's not going to achieve anything because the establishment is just against them wholesale.
Yeah, I mean, who cares about little English white girls, especially little English working class white girls? Nobody does, really.
Yeah,
that's the truth of it. I'm sorry. I mean, the Labour Party sure don't care about them, and the so-called Conservatives sure don't care about them. Nor do the Greens, nor do the Lib Dems. They're inconvenient stuff that they really just want to ignore.
Yeah, I mean, Doxastic Draco in the chat just said CivNet operatives were coordinating a "Don't Talk About Grooming Gangs" campaign about a month back. Circumspection is one thing; aggressively assisting the left covering up an atrocity is another. Yeah, I mean they've been doing this for a long time now, and I mean you still see this come up now. They'll jump to this. Well, don't talk about the race thing, and at some points you kind of have to stand back and say, well, I wasn't talking about the race; I was actually talking about the religion. And in other instances, you were talking about the race, and they confuse it for the religion. And
we could just turn around and say I wasn't talking about race or religion. I was talking about little children being raped.
Yeah, but then when you say that, the thing is they try to obfuscate that, and they try to then say, "Oh, Me Too's going on. Why don't you talk about that? That's this problem too." And it's like, well, no, it isn't. You deliberately use that to cover
it
this stuff
isn't.
up.
And
to
Me
sweep it under
Too,
the rug.
much of Me Too is crap.
Yeah, it's all like middle class white liberal women having a cry about
Some bloke said to me, "I thought you were cute." So therefore, I felt I felt, what do they call them, microaggression, and I reported him immediately. That is not the same as some poor little English child being taken by a group of half a dozen Pakistanis and being absolutely insulted and even on occasions branded by those scum.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because didn't Me Too start over an Indian guy? But it's kind of like opposites, because it's like, in this instance, we're talking about very aggressive, in some instances quite violent, very malicious Pakistani rape gangs. And in the other instance, it was a timid, shy little Indian programmer who had some anxiety issues and went on an awkward date.
Yeah. I mean, look, so far as I'm concerned, Me Too ended up with the Johnny Depp case, and Johnny Depp won because Johnny Depp was innocent.
Mm.
And everyone now knows that Amber Heard is a shitty, literally shitty, bad whore, basically. I mean, but whatever. But I'm sorry that I was being a bit facetious there. But I look, if you can't defend your own bloody children, and these white girls being groomed in inverted commas are children. And Britain is doing almost nothing to defend them.
Mm. Well, this is the thing. I mean, they actively stop families from being able to act in ways. And the thing is, I mean, because God's Own a little way back said about he bought Free Girls on DVD to keep hard copies.
Yeah.
There was a guy who was loosely connected to PA called Saint something or other.
Oh God.
On YouTube, he's a good guy, and he was backing up onto his YouTube channel. I'm not sure if he's still around, but he had on his YouTube channel certain old BBC free like mini documentaries that were quite Saint Harrison, that's the one. That were quite good. And one of them in particular always stood out to me, and it was this single mum I think it was in Bradford, and they were the last sort of like white family on the street. Mm-hmm. And she had 2 kids, and her daughter was essentially being groomed into Islam. And her son was like bunking off school because he was like the only white kid in his class, and he was maliciously bullied. And I just thought that everything about our current system and everything that makes it disgusting is sort of encapsulated in this one situation. Because, I mean, really, what that daughter needed is Christianity. She needed to see some of her own religious heritage. Well, and her single mother.
But she also needed a dad.
Yes.
And some other male relatives who would have like sorted out the Pakistanis.
They needed a community that was of their own. They needed a family unit.
Absolutely, Absolutely.
And of course her mum was just some Gen Xer that had been raised without religion, that had been told that that to be a single mother is this sort of absolutely fine situation. And it just, everything about the system that is inherently disgusting was just sort of encapsulated in this situation. I can't remember the name of the documentary, but it was on his channel. Yeah, hopefully he's still got it on there.
God's Own Prototype says it's currently on YouTube as The Saint Returns.
Yeah.
So there you go, boys. Go and look it up. Anything to add to that, Mitch?
My take on the whole, like, even just like the etymology of like grooming gang. I mean, it's rather telling that we have to have our own category for those particular crimes. It's so foreign to us, and it's so alien, and so disgusting to us that we have to have a separate category for it. Like, that's the main take I've got.
Well, I mean, look, it's a cover-up, isn't it, Mitch? It's a cover-up.
Sure,
If that was white blokes doing that to black or brown girls, that would not be what it would be called. Trust me, and it would be headlines on all of the British mainstream media every single day.
There's a reason Jimmy Savile had to act covertly. He couldn't do the stuff he did overtly, like that.
But you see, Mitch, I've seen this stuff about Jimmy Savile before, and Jimmy Savile was a vile scumbag. CUNT. All right, he was.
Yeah,
but he was one individual. He was not part of a culture.
That's literally what I just said. I said, look, even with the leftist copy of Jimmy Savile, even then, I mean, the guy like Jimmy Savile had to do the stuff he did very, very secretly. You couldn't just do what the Pakistanis did, where they'll cover up each other rather than actually do the lawful thing. Whereas if a grooming gang happened among white Britons, you and I know that said grooming gang would be copped out to the police within 5 minutes.
Absolutely,
that's
right.
That's my point.
Yeah, I mean, Morgoth made this point recently. I think he was responding to a tweet, or he was looking at a tweet with a pretty common talking point where they were saying, "Oh, let's not mention the 90% of child abuse convictions were white men." Now, I've heard this thrown around a lot. I'm not actually sure if it's even true.
No, it isn't.
I remember a bread tuber a while ago bringing this up, and I think this is where this came from, where he basically implied that he said if you broke child sexual exploitation down into two groups, grooming gangs on one side, again, as we've just said, the category literally invented for this crime, and singular instances on the other, white men are overrepresented, or white men are 90% of the singular instances. It's like, okay, but that's a fraction of a fraction. It's a stupid way of delineating the data anyway. But I'm not even
it's particularly not true, Armin.
Because there was a guy that our little Royal Oak, got into a little bit of an argument with, a little bit of a back and forth, a larger YouTuber. I can't for the life of me remember his name, but he made a video on this grooming gangs. He's a leftist. He's scum. But and of course, as they all do, he's got to dig in on Tommy Robinson. It's all got to be about Tommy Robinson. They can't talk about anything else. It's all got to be on this singular figure that they can bash about. And he actually brings up a data set in the video. And if you click on, and he brings up the percentage of men to women, he's making some stupid joke. And the funny thing is, if you click on the source for that data set in his description, it actually proves the argument about grooming gang demographics that he was spending the entire video trying to disprove.
Yeah.
These people have seen the arguments. They know it's wrong, but they still push this shit.
Mitch in the chat says Aaron Dugmore.
Yeah, that's because God's Arm Project I was talking about, and that 9-year-old boy who got bullied to death for being white in Birmingham.
Right. Kid. Oh, lovely.
Didn't they try to also twist that onto his family as well?
Yeah, I think it was something like I think it's something like a dysfunctional family or something, if I remember correctly. I mean, he was one of the few white boys in Birmingham, so you can imagine his family's situation isn't too great. On top of the demographics of his area.
Look, guys, I don't know. Look, to me, this is perfectly obvious, but I reckon you two chaps will totally agree. These days, everything on the mainstream media is basically based on white people bad, straight white men totally evil, and nothing else gets talked about, really. Even though there is no evidence that white people are particularly bad or straight white men are totally evil, there's no evidence for that. But that's all we get constantly.
Either that, or you'll just get ethnic minorities bigged up as these ubermensch people who can't do anything wrong, like that one Indian, or I don't know, this one woman who's put down as the only ethnic minority bird watcher or something. That keeps getting shown on my YouTube.
Wow.
Because that was actually
I've been a Twitcher since I was a small boy, so I'll definitely go and try and find that.
I mean, I take it the reason you brought this up is because of that England football team thing.
Oh, you
Did you
mean
guys see this?
you mean the women's England football team?
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
you?
yeah.
Yeah.
They're not a proper football team, obviously, but
Adamant, the only women's sport I have ever watched was I think it still goes on. It's a version of American gridiron football where the women wear underwear,
oh god,
lingerie.
that's so classless.
That's the only thing I ever watch of women ball games, and it ain't for their skill. But there you go.
Well, yeah. So yes, yeah. I mean, that happened as well, didn't it? But I mean, the funny thing is that the woman who said it, the BBC sports presenter. I mean, she's dating a Black England footballer.
What a surprise!
Yeah, who was also who was done, I think, like 3 or 4 years. I think 4 years ago, for having an affair with this woman. And then when the woman told his wife about it, he was like stalking her and threatening her down the phone and that. So I hope not, but maybe
don't know,
she'll pay the
guys.
toll at some point. We'll see.
Did anyone notice the first black regimental sergeant major of the Coldstream Guards very recently? The only reason he became a black regimental sergeant major of the Coldstream Guards was because he was black. He was a diversity hire. And he's recently been convicted, along with another black guy, of selling ammunition to drug dealers.
Doesn't surprise me.
Diversity is our strength, boys. It really is. Even in the Coldstream Guards.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there was another thing. Like, I mean, not to diverge from this topic too much, but there was another thing instantly where there was a woman who is the head of. I don't know what her specific position is, but she's in the Scottish government, and she's essentially in charge of like schools in some capacity. And she was given this big talk about diversity as our strength. She's got a headscarf on, and she's saying about like, oh, it increases the sort of pot of talent that you can draw from. And I mean that's another thing that gets thrown around a lot that's just flagrantly bullshit. I actually saw something recently, which was a study of IQs across ethnicities within certain jobs in the United States. And what they found was that like there were loads of actually above IQ white janitors who were just wasting away in this crappy job. And some of them had higher IQs than like sort of like black lawyers and middle managers.
Yeah. Hang on, Leah Ham in the chat is saying, I'm surprised this RSM wasn't selling drugs. There's a lot of it around just now, or at least it's being found more often. Leah Ham, this bloke was deliberately promoted to regimental sergeant major of the Coldstream Guards, one of the very oldest British Army regiments, because he was black. He was a diversity hire. I dare say he passed half a dozen much better NCOs just because he was black.
Yeah, and I mean it highlights how stupid he was, because if he'd been dealing drugs, he probably would have got a much lighter sentence.
Well, there is that, but also, regimental sergeant majors in the British Army get pretty damn good pensions.
Yeah.
And are really highly respected people. But he and another non-Anglo-Celtic person in the Coldstream Guards were convicted of selling ammunition to drug dealers. I mean, I'm sure the drug dealers were giving them drugs in return, but I mean, like, this is just fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, the Coldstream Guards are one of the oldest regiments in the British Army. And I honestly, trust me, gentlemen, he would have gone past at least half a dozen better Anglo-Celtic white NCOs just because he was black, because the Guards wanted to turn around and say, look, we have a black RSM. And what did he do? Fuck him immediately.
Well, I mean, they still deny that diversity hires are even a thing. Also, Craig55 put in the chat. He said, "I think that's the video he put in Discord." Yeah, I've just had a look. Yeah, that was where I saw it. Yeah, so that's Craig55's video
Is that one?
in the Discord. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Mitch, what's your first subject for this evening?
There was topic of I put in Discord one time about for Britain closing up shop because Anne-Marie Waters is.
We are going to talk about that, but if you have anything else, talk about that first.
That and Joe Biden getting humiliated in Saudi Arabia, pretty much.
Oh, go on, do talk about that because I thought that was very amusing.
Yeah, so I remember back in the election, he was saying that America should not be friendly with Saudi Arabia because they killed off that Jamal Khashoggi or whatever his name is, that Saudi journalist. He visited Saudi Arabia in his Middle Eastern tour anyway, because he wanted them to increase oil production to make up for the shortages of oil coming in from Russia for Europe. But Saudis basically told him, "Yeah, we're not going to increase our oil production for you. Sod off." So that's pretty much that shot in the water. It looks like you won't be getting any oil from the Saudis to make up for Russian oil.
Did you did you notice, Mitch, when Joe Biden compared the Palestinians to the Palestinian treatment by the Israelis to the Irish by the British?
Yeah, that is just. I look around and just think he was also there to pretty much be friendly with the Israelis, and he shoots that in the foot by comparing Irish to Palestinians. So he's also
he also said, "Let's celebrate the honor of the Holocaust."
Wait, that was actually real.
Yeah, he did say that. Yeah.
I mean, he corrected himself right after, but he said the keep alive the honor of the Holocaust. Yeah.
The guy is absolute. He's a totally senile moron, basically.
I'm just waiting for the day when his dementia gets so bad he gets back to his bloody KKK days.
Well, he even reads out his instructions. Like it will say,
I saw that.
Repeat the last point, then carry on and stop. And he reads the repeat the last point and carry on and stop. And this is the leader of the most powerful state in the Western world. For God's sake, it's so pathetic. Oh my God. Whoever, Spindly in the chat, this is quite funny, says, whoever controls the teleprompter controls America.
Well, yeah, we were basically in that age. I mean, it's terrible. But the thing is, I mean, there's been a lot of talk from people. They've said, they're going to get rid of him. But who would you even replace him with if you were a Democrat?
Well, he's not very popular, but he's vastly more popular than Kamala Harris, who is a moron without even being senile. So, I mean,
if you're a Republican, I mean, they're all terrible too. But there's quite a few options. Trump's obviously very popular. They've got you've got your Ron DeSantis. There's actually a bunch of Republican politicians who are dreadful, but are at least reasonably charismatic and can do well in a presidential race. But if you're the Democrats, you've literally got no one. I mean, fortifying the election is basically all they've got left for them now.
Well, look, I'm going to do a stream at some stage with Don and hopefully Sergeant Sniper about what may happen in the next American election. I think the best thing would be for Trump to run and DeSantis not to run. But I'm not an American, so I'm not even going to pretend I know. But I will be asking those guys what they think would be the best deal.
Another thing I meant to say about America was, have you heard about ALC? She basically wants the topic of abortion to be ruled by executive order as opposed to Supreme Court.
Yeah. I'm not sure that I don't know if Americans could. Look, I'm not sure, and again, this is something I'd have to ask Americans. I thought, like, if the Supreme Court says something, it's pretty difficult for the American president to go around it, but I don't know. I might be wrong about that.
I mean, I'm pretty sure with an executive order, it can get challenged by anyone. It goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is the ultimate authority of the land, as opposed to the president in that scenario.
I literally don't know, mate. I really don't. But I will ask people like Don and Sergeant Sniper about it at some point when I speak to them. All right, guys. Did you have anything else about that one, Mitch or Adam?
Not from me. I'm good now.
Can't think of anything either.
All right. So, what do we think about the winding up of Anne-Marie War's For Britain party, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, was a right of centre, vaguely populist UK party that she set up after she failed to win the leadership of UKIP, which almost certainly was a con at the time, I have to say. But, carry on.
I don't know hardly anything about it. I know we've got a few For Britain guys in our periphery. I know is it Five Alive? He's usually floating around.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him tonight, but
Adam, and you would have seen my interview with Eddie Butler.
Yeah, Jonathan. Yeah. Eddie Butler was a For Britain guy as well.
Yeah, very much involved with them. Yes.
I mean, have you heard from him?
No, I haven't yet, but I do want to get him on a stream and ask him where he's going to go from here.
But it's just, what was this actually? Why did they wind down? Is it just a loss of funds or?
Well, as far as I can work out, Anne-Marie was just decided I'm not going to do this anymore.
Huh.
That's all I can see. I mean, I can't see any particular reason otherwise.
Yeah, I just posted in private chat what Anne-Marie Ward has put. Like, she's effectively really black-pilled. She thinks that after COVID, like, the enemy's propaganda has been so damn good that there's no way a real patriotic party will get anywhere.
She's got a point.
Yeah.
No, I don't really agree with that.
I mean, we should be hopeful, but from her position, I would definitely get pretty depressed about the whole thing too.
Yeah, but I mean, like, just surrendering ain't going to do you any good, is it? I mean, what's she going to do? Where is she going to go?
I mean, not going to lie, I don't really mourn her party going under just because I remember back when Qasem Soleimani got killed off, and she was like pretty much wanting us to carpet bomb Iran because they're not kind to gay people. So
Yep.
Yeah, she was kind of like in the Murray camp in that regard, isn't she?
Yeah,
her problem with immigrants is that they weren't gay and liberal enough.
Yeah, look, listen, I had my problems with Anne-Marie Wars. I mean, she's a lesbian Irish woman. On the other hand, she likes dogs, which is a plus. But yeah, and the thing that I really
hang on just quickly, Lee Ham in the chat said, "Oh, for Britain and Britain First, two different parties." Yeah,
yes.
Britain First was Paul Golding and the other lady.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they're still around.
Yeah, that's the girl with the big tits. Yeah.
I don't know. No, I don't think so. No, the one with the big tits is a different party. Another one.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, with the red hair. Jada Francis.
Yes, that's the one with the big tits. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So different parties. But I'm going to come on to that in a minute because there are so many different right of centre populist parties. But yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know what is Anne-Marie Wars going to do now then.
I'm just wondering who Morrissey's going to support now that For Britain's gone as well. I wonder who Morrissey's going to support. after this.
Yeah.
It's just
He did a song recently, didn't he? Or he's writing one about the Manchester Arena bombing.
I think God's Own Prototype might be correct that Jardo is Golding's ex, though. Yes, maybe.
Yeah, I've heard. I mean, this is from a BBC documentary, but I mean, she went on, where she pretty much said Golding was abusing her, so that's why she
right,
Britain
okay.
first. Yeah.
So me too from the right. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and Jade is like
stunning and brave.
Yeah, I've also heard Jada has buddied up with Nick Griffin. I can't remember the name of the party, but it's like some like British Freedom Party or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing.
How many small right of centre pies did Britain have? I like a couple of years ago, I did a list and got to at least 9 or 10.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like ones that are legitimate parties. It's got to be like 5, 6, something like that.
All right, I Jobu I see was in the chat, and on our there we go. Mammogram job. Well, at least she looked like a chick, but whatever. He did say on our Discord, which I agreed with, that getting rid of For Britain might overall help the British right of centre nationalist stroke populist movement, because actually all these dudes have to get together. If they don't, they're never going to get anywhere.
I mean, when it comes to that, I'm pretty black-pilled on that, because on one hand, you've got Reform UK, who are run by a Thatcherite who can't stop talking about taxes. You've got you've got the SDP, who I actually quite like them. I don't know what the word is, but they don't go far enough on mass immigration, would be my point. Then you got Heritage Party, who I quite like them, but some of the stuff they say about COVID, it might be too peripheral for like your average guy on the street. I
do you know what? This winter, if they bring that stuff back, Mitch, it's not going to be peripheral. It's going to become centre, and I think they are going to try and bring it back.
I do think the Heritage Party have always been a little bit. The funny thing is they're really quite boomerish, but then they end up actually being quite ahead of the curve, which always, like when this lockdown stuff first came in, and David Curtin from Heritage Party just immediately jumped on that, like against that stuff, and was talking about the COVID and the vaccine stuff and vaccine passports, and I was a bit dubious because I thought, he's probably gonna push a lot of people away because this is sounding a little bit silly, and it's easily being thrown aside as a conspiracy theory. But then, like, everything he predicted ended up sort of coming down the pipe, given enough time.
Yep.
And he kind of did it again with like the net zero stuff, but I think he still just jumps the gun a little bit, but he does even though he comes off as very boomerish, he does seem to have a finger on the pulse, as it were.
Yeah, you've also got UKIP, who Steve Laws was part of, but apparently I don't know why he's left the party.
But hang on, guys. I do know that when Farage left UKIP, which he did very prematurely after the Brexit vote, even while Farage was the leader, there were enormous problems with I think it's called the National Executive Committee of UKIP.
Yeah.
And many of those people are still in charge, and UKIP will not go anywhere until many of those people are booted.
I mean,
that's why Batten got chucked out, and Batten was a pretty good bloke on the whole. Yeah,
well, I would say a bit about is, don't you think the UKIP brand has been so tarnished by all the infighting that the NEC caused that you could swim your dead fish in the water? I could be wrong, but don't you think they're somewhat dead in the water by now because all the infighting is just made.
Well, I think UKIP could come back, but they need a new National Executive Committee who runs them and allow good candidates. That's all they need, but that hasn't happened. And where I blame Farage is he just walked away as soon as after the Brexit vote was finished. And I'm sure he had his battles with those wanks. But at the same time, just walking away was like not a good plan.
I mean, I've heard like different reasons as to why Farage left. One hand, he was tired of politics, but then Matt here generally thought that the Tories would do it. But I just thought that was I couldn't think he was that naive that he'd think the Tories would actually do it. Perhaps it's opportunism on his part because he thought, I'll leave UKIP because then I've got a good reason via getting Brexit for the referendum. But then when the Tories inevitably screw it all up, I'll come back, create my new party where I control everything, and rest is history.
But then he left that as well.
Yeah, which could be a vindication of the first reason I said, which was it could be that he's just tired of politics. He doesn't want to do any more elections. He'll commentate, but doesn't want to do elections. I could be wrong. I'm just hearing different narratives about it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Dorsastic Draco in the chat says, no, he didn't just walk away. He incited a sabotage campaign against A. Waters, Batten and Brain. I'm not sure about Batten and Brain, but he certainly did against Anne-Marie Waters. Yes, he did. And
yeah,
that's the reason that For Britain got set up, because she absolutely should have won that election. And I can't even remember what the dude's name was now.
Henry Bolton.
Yeah, he won, who then got done for being a married bloke who was having an affair with a much younger woman. I didn't really care about that, but I did care about the fact that he was totally useless politically, So, yeah.
Yeah, he did go against Batten. I kept like, because when I remember when they were organising that, like that Brexit betrayal event back in like December 2018, I think it was, and Farage just went like full on anti-Batten and Tommy Robinson mode on that particular event. So
yep.
I don't know about Richard Brain, Mo. I don't think he said anything about Richard Brain, to my knowledge, anyway.
I kind of think Batten is a bit overrated on the right.
I reckon he was all right, to be honest with you.
I just think that inviting Robinson in was a bad move, a really bad move.
Yeah, maybe, but
and to be effect as well, kind of a little bit Sargon. I know I was just defending him a minute ago, and I ultimately do, but I just someone like him is not someone you keep inside the party in an official position.
I'm not too sure, to be honest with you.
You set them up adjacent.
Yeah, I guess you could, but I mean, look, on the one hand, on the right, Robinson gets convicted of being an Israeli shill, and sure he was, and is. But on the other hand, he spent more time in jail than anyone on the right. So, you can try and work out what's going on there to the best of your ability, I guess.
I mean, to be fair, some of the times he's been in prison. There was that one case where he was right outside the court commentating on it, and even he said when he was commentating, "Yeah, I'm not meant to do this," but he did it anyway, and he collapsed the trial also.
Yeah, it wasn't. Well, yeah, but it didn't make any difference whatsoever to the Pakistani grooming gang people he was talking about.
Sure, but it's still a bad look that he even conceded that he was not meant to commentate on it to begin with, but he still did it anyway. So he gets arrested. Then all his followers are, they get grifted on by the guy in charge of Rebel Media. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I know the bloke you're talking about.
Yeah, that Rebel Media is just from Avi Yemeni and those lot. They're just a massive grift.
Yeah, they are a massive grift. I totally agree. But on the other hand, they're also often right.
Yeah, I can. I mean, some of the stuff they said back in the day, like back in 2017 when I used to follow them, yeah. They
No,
did
I
say
mean,
a lot.
even to this day today, when they're going on about the Canadian trucker protest and all the rest of it, I don't disagree for a minute that they're a big time grifting organisation, but often what they say is not incorrect.
Mm.
That's
Yeah,
all I'm saying.
I mean, the thing I
But-
have with Robinson, the problem I have with Robinson is more that, he's a bit of a cokehead, and he's sort of, sucks in a lot of funding, and yeah, just stuff like that. I just don't, he's fine being out there doing his own thing. I wouldn't absorb him into your party.
Yeah, I mean, my main problem with Batten was he wasn't exactly charismatic. That's why I don't think he could be as successful as Farage was, because he just didn't have that charisma. Like, he just seemed to me like, I wouldn't say bureaucrat, but he just didn't seem like the sort of guy you'd want leading a party, because he couldn't do like a massive charismatic speech like Farage done back in the Euro elections.
Would you say, Mitch, that Batten was as charismatic as Sir Keir Starmer or Boris Johnson, for example?
I think a corpse is more charismatic than Keir Starmer, to be honest.
Well, yeah, absolutely. This was my main point. But I don't think that, like, Alexander Boris Johnson's particularly charismatic, to be honest with you. I mean, he's foolish, but he isn't charismatic. And unless your idea of charismatic is, like, fairly childish.
I think that with Johnson, I think a lot of the things that endear him to regular people are the aspects of his character which are which the media pillory him for, and ultimately aren't reflective of what he actually believes. Like when he called homosexuals tank top bum boys.
Yeah, I mean, but what he really believes is Alexander Johnson. That's the.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing he believes in.
Well, I mean, you've seen that recently, because it's like he's been floundering around in his position since the election.
Yep.
And then when the fight was on for his job, suddenly he's got like an understanding of intricate power analysis and how to use it. And it's like, well, why weren't you using this when you made promises about, decriminalizing the license fee or combating grooming gangs or
none of which he actually did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a bit that gets me. But Boris Johnson is the end of his political career was so anticlimactic compared to what he promised back in 2019. Like he marketed himself as this populist candidate fighting the establishment over Brexit. A few years later, he gets done out because he's partying while we're all locked down. But it's pretty much very anticlimactic that he marketed as a populist, and yet he became the very thing that supposedly in quotation marks that he fought against back in 2019. But that's what I find so funny about Boris or Alexander, whichever way you want to call him.
Well, I ain't going to call him Boris because that's what he wants you to call him, and I never have.
I just call him Boris just because it's easier. I mean, it's just too much of a habit to change.
Yeah, sure, for sure. Look, guys, looking at all right, before we move to this, let's carry on with what we were talking about, which is right-wing or sort of right-of-centre populist parties after the winding up of For Britain. Do they have a future, do you think?
I mean, you'd have to have... If all the right-wing parties from like the likes of UKIP, Heritage, Reform, SDP, etc., all got into some alliance, perhaps we'd have a chance, so long as there's a coherent narrative, had competent leadership, and some sense of direction where infighting was minimalized, if not outright, just not a thing altogether.
Here, Mitch. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main problems of white guys. We don't have a coherent narrative, because I mean, you get some people who say, "Oh, well, mass immigration is done deliberately to replace white people," which
is.
Yeah, and then you get other people on the right who say, "Oh, well, this is just because we're run by careerists who think that mass immigration is good for businesses. They don't do it as like means of like replacing us. That's one
No,
another narrative people.
Mitch, it's line go up for sure. It is line
Yeah.
go up.
Yeah,
But
my point is,
these people don't care if the real Anglo-Celtic British people die out. They don't care at all. All
Yeah,
they care about is line go up.
yeah, that's my point. Is there's so many clashing narratives when you look at it from an outside point of view, they don't really clash. They can all be formed into one coherent one. Like you can say mass immigration is there to replace actual native Anglo-Celtic people.
Which it is.
What you can also say, there's also financial reasons from, let's say, the Tories. They do mass immigration because the banks, they invest into housing. As long as housing's expensive, the Tories will get the donations from the bankers.
Yeah,
So
and at the same time as making housing more expensive, of course, it forces down wages. So yeah absolutely.
So that's my point. Is you can have like a coherent narrative from all these different ones. You can just merge it into one to get all these like right-wing parties on side. As for leadership, I mean that's the main stumbling block, to be honest, is who do you have leaders.
You have to have somebody like Farage who will stand up and say, okay, I'll do that.
It's like, in terms of leadership, you want something like the charisma of Boris Johnson, the principled stances of what's his name, the guy in charge of heritage,
David Curtin.
Yeah, imagine like him being principled on stuff like, because he's very anti-abortion, for example. We could use that in our politics, and something like the connections of like someone like Anne-Marie Waters in terms of getting Morrissey on board. That's what I would say. It's like another thing with Farage was there's a lot of like right-wing people who had a lot of money on them who funded UKIP. That's also another thing we could do with is getting, like, because you look at Aaron Banks, we could do with someone like that over here again.
Adam, what's your opinion on these right of centre populist parties and where they may go?
In truth, I have no idea. I mean, I used to think there was a future in this stuff still, but Lawrence Fox, his little milquetoast Liberal Party, they recently had their bank account closed down. I think I mentioned this on a previous episode.
I think you did actually, yeah.
And now I just don't see a future. I understand why people like Anne-Marie Waters have closed it down. I think if there's a future for the right, it has to exist outside of politics. With some allies within it, but not indentured into larger parties, not.
So you think we're doomed, Adam? Because
no.
As far as I'm concerned, like if there is no alternative to the Conservatives as a real right-wing party, we're doomed.
The thing is, it's
my own opinion.
But it's just the case that I mean, we all know that the power doesn't reside within the parties anyway. So
it kind of does though.
Yeah, to an extent, but it's like, even if you got like our guy in as prime minister tomorrow, they ultimately aren't going to be able to change anything. I mean, you look at like people were quite hopeful for France in the recent elections, and indeed it went better than a lot of us thought.
Yes.
But even if let's say
Marine Le Pen,
Fromage walked into power, I think like 47 or 48% of France's GDP is just government spending.
Yeah, but that's higher in France than it is in UK.
Sure, but the size of the civil service that we're up against now is tremendous, and it's just getting bigger every year.
I totally agree with you on that, Armin, but I don't see how you think we're going to get anywhere or even manage to survive as an Anglo-Celtic people if that is the case. I just don't get it. We're doomed if what you're saying is correct.
No, not really. You
How are we going to survive then?
well, I mean, you've got a parallel establishment idea you could go for. I'm
Not in Britain, mate. It's too small. It's not big enough.
No, it's not really to do with size.
You might get away with that in America.
Yeah, you're thinking about
You-
this in a very
you-
physical instance like the Amish,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but but you might get away with that in America. You might even get away with it in Australia, maybe. Although
the
I'd be
Hasidic
more dubious.
Jews are basically a parallel society living here in
Oh,
the UK.
okay, yeah. If you just want us to be like a people with no place, then yeah, absolutely, that's possible. Because that's all you're going to get from that.
No, it's not, because you can build out of that. That's something they don't have that we do.
What, 500 years? Are you talking about like 500 years time?
Well, I mean, you could actually do it pretty quick, to be honest.
Why not keep our country in the first place?
Because you've got no strategy for doing that. None of us have.
Well, okay, but that's because you're saying there's no room for a third right of centre populist party, which I don't agree with.
Because they'll cancel your bank accounts.
No, I don't think they will. Ultimately, I don't think they'll be able
But, I mean, they are, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, all right. They did it to Lawrence Fox's Poxy
And
Pie.
Laura Towler.
What a surprise.
Well, what do you mean? What a surprise for Laura
Well,
Towler?
Laura Towler, okay, is in PA. PA
Yeah.
is not a political party in the first place.
So it's even weirder that she'd have her bank account closed down.
Fair enough. But she's also in a political party run by Mark Collette. Mark Collette is an absolute fan of Adolf Babes and says so every opportunity he gets. And I am absolutely convinced he's also some sort of asset for the British government. But, whatever. And Laura Towler also married a National Action dude. Did she not?
Yeah, but I don't think that's that big of a deal.
Nor do I, mate. No, I don't think the British government gives a shit about National Action people.
Yeah, but he's not active now. It's completely inconsequential.
National Action,
the guy's actually like really a big softy anyway. So
yeah, but National Action isn't a deal now anyway. But he was a member of that.
Mm.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not agreeing that he should be like cast aside from civilization because of that, and still less that Laura Towler should be. But the fact is, if you've got any bloody common sense, that's the truth.
Sure. I mean, when the police go around their house, I can kind of get it. But, we're talking about a bank closing down her bank account.
Hang on. I've got to send Jobu a link, so I'm going to carry on.
I mean, another one, because Godzone's kind of mentioned this. I mean, that's kind of my other idea, is that we just have entryism in the Tory party, but not for a strategic reason, just for shitposting reasons. Because you'd be surprised, actually. People would be absolutely shocked at how desperate the Tory party is for young talent. Like, if you get like 6 mates,
I wouldn't, but yeah.
If you get 6 good friends and you join the Tory party, within 8 months you could be standing on a stage alongside either the PM or the PM hopeful. And that just opens up all sorts of brilliant trolling opportunities. And admittedly, you're going to burn your time in the Tory party, but it's a bit of fun if nothing else, and you can do some real damage with it.
Okay.
Almost kamikaze style.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree. Jobu, you wanted to come on. What did you want to talk about, mate?
A couple of things. So, Adamant.
Yep.
The Brexit Party won a national election, did it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you still think there's no hope?
Yeah, I've lost all my hope. Yeah.
Look, I understand your despair, mate. I do, but in terms of what's going on with these little, probably micro parties like Britain First or whatnot, and the people aren't voting for them. Well, let's face into it. Like, these are fucking spurg parties for the most part. They're not. How much support do we really think Anne-Marie Waters is gonna get out there? You know, if the British public or the Australian public or whoever are presented with a reasonable alternative like a Farage to vote for, and the set of issues, conservative issues to vote for, then they tend to go after it. So I don't think it's all that bleak. And no, Boris ran as a Conservative in your last general election, and he got an 80-seat majority. Now, he hasn't governed as a Conservative. That's a different matter. But I don't think electoral politics are all that bleak.
Yeah, the thing is that like it takes a long time to build up a Farage, and then and as it is now, half the people on the right think the current Farage we've got is a Fed. So
who thinks that? The Fed?
Well, it's quite a few people on the right. I mean, even I think AA has made the point that he's containment or whatever.
Fucking AA doesn't know what he's talking about, guys. Like, I don't know if you guys have figured that out or not. I'm sure if you ask him about Shakespeare, he's well versed, but he doesn't understand people or politics.
Yeah, sure, 100%. But yeah, there's quite a few people that say it. Too many people that say it.
What specifically got me a bit curious, mate? What specifically leads people to think Farage is a Fed?
I'm not entirely sure. I think Duke, you pointed out that you think that he did quite a lot of damage to UKIP on the way out, and various other people have said things of a similar thing. They say that he's essentially just trying to contain the British public and contain the discontent, and then he just jumped to another party.
Is this Farage you're talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, I have mixed thinking on Farage. I mean, on the one hand, he's the one bloke who could stand up and lead a decent right of centre opposition party, but on the other hand, he hasn't done it yet. So, you know.
2 points on Farage. Firstly, I feel like sometimes, and I don't mean this as a personal thing to anyone here, but the dissident right seems to have very short-term memories. Like I before the Brexit vote legitimised Farage in the eyes of a lot of people, he was seen as a bit of a it was a very disparaged figure, right? But it was only post the Brexit referendum winning that he became the lovable Nigel that the GB News viewers all know and love. And secondly, I've got a different interpretation of the events around his departure from UKIP, because I remember him having to go on TV and defend some fucking spurg, posting shit online in the middle of the night and all that. Remember all those little incidents, and the media would use it to beat him up, and infighting with the UKIP executives. So I think he had enough of all that and thought, you know what, fuck this. I'm going to create my own thing. I'm going to run it, and it's going to be my way or the highway. And that was what became the Brexit Party. So I'm a bit more sympathetic to Nigel than I think some of you guys might be.
I think he could turn things around. I just don't see any sign of him doing it yet. I'm not as black-pilled as Adam, and I do think that a third party in the UK, a third right-of-centre populist party could rise. But it needs somebody like Farage to lead it. And if he did, then you might get some of the other smaller right-of-centre parties to join some kind of alliance, which I think is essential.
The right wing is sort of like the life of Brian. You've got the People's Front in Judea, the Judean People's Front, and all that stuff.
Yep, absolutely correct. You're 100% right, Joe. 100% agree.
They're too busy fighting each other to fight the Romans, you know what I mean? So,
I totally agree.
I mean, my hope on British nationalism kind of lives and dies on what Farage is saying at the time. I was hoping he'd be our version of Tucker Carlson. That hasn't quite happened yet, but he's still doing.
I think he's a bit more consistent than Tucker Carlson, to be honest.
I mean, the one thing I'll say as well is a lot of people are quite hard on this guy he got in to replace him in Reform. But to be honest, I think that guy's just a seat warmer. I think
Yeah.
he's just there to keep the party ticking over.
I damn well hope you're right, mate. I damn well hope you're
Yeah,
right.
I hope I'm right.
Mitch, you haven't said much. What's your opinion on Farage and right of centre populist parties in the UK?
I'm Farage. I'm very mixed. It's like on one hand, I dislike him because he did shoot right on, say, the likes of Gerard Batten. But then again, he did give us Brexit, which was a massive culture change.
Yep.
Like the first culture victory the right has had since Section 28, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no other European country is even close to leaving the EU except Britain.
Yeah, I mean, the closest you've got is probably France with Marine Le Pen, I suppose. But even then,
well, Farage is generally fairly complimentary about Marine Le Pen these days.
Yeah. I forgot. Oh, yeah. You often get this whole narrative on Farage, basically, because apparently there's this clip where he brags about destroying the BNP, and I'm just sat there thinking, well, even if, let's say, you're pro BNP, you'd have to consider BNP were in no position to ever get to the same political highs that Farage did when he was part of UKIP. So you get there's that narrative that a lot of dissident has about Farage, which I'm not particularly a fan of. I do think it does punch right, but let's face it, Farage has done far more than anyone to the right of him has done for ages.
I was about to say that as well, mate. I agree. Like, he waged a 30-year war against the EU and won. Like, he's mucked in, if you know what I mean. Like, how much what do we expect from one guy? You know?
Yeah, we do need another leader on the right for sure, Joe. I mean, look, when he talked about the BNP, I'm not a big fan of Nazi LARPA parties. For one thing, I don't think they're going to get anywhere and they're counterproductive. But on the other hand, I think the right spends far too much time punching right. We just do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it depends on what the context is, because one of the things that Tony Blair brought up once was that you need to actually have a movement. You can't have all these little groups fighting amongst each other. You need to pull everyone, sometimes quite fiercely, under the one canopy. And I think, to be honest, most of the time that I see it from Farage, that's what I see, is him trying to pull a movement together rather than just knocking people out.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, look, I've said for ages that all of these smaller right of centre parties need some sort of alliance. You know that. I've said it like for years now. And at the same time, I think the Conservative leadership election, which we're going to go on to talk about in a minute, proves that needs to happen, because nothing's going to happen with the so-called, in inverted commas, Conservatives. It just ain't.
And you got to remember too that Farage, along with Mark Stein, to an even bigger degree, they're sitting on the GB News, tugging the open window right. Like, I've been watching Stein again lately, and he's been banging on about grooming gangs and vaccine victims. So they serve they're not in Parliament, but they're serving a purpose. So,
Jobu, I've got to say to you, you are the one person that when you come on this stream, there is always birdsong behind you.
Yeah, I'm out for an early morning walk because the old Mucker Millsy came around for surf and turf last night.
Well, you're in a good spot for birds, I've got to say.
Yeah, the place I'm in, it's council bylaws. It's an SLLPLO or something, but basically you're not allowed to cut down any tree over half a foot in diameter. So there's birds fucking everywhere, mate. It's great.
Yeah, no, birds are cool. I've been a twitcher since I was a little boy, so cool.
I had some grape juice last night, but I think it had gone bad. So I'm just trying to clear my head, to be honest with you.
God's own prototype in the chat is saying BNP has banned the use of the following words. They learned much of the same lesson that has since before they got taken out. Listen, guys, I was a 37 words supporter, so
Didn't I mean, aren't the BNP doing very well financially now?
I have no idea, mate. I don't follow them, but I can believe they may be. I have no idea.
Mm.
I do want to do a stream with Eddie Butler, who was involved with For Britain, and one of the reasons that For Britain was doing quite well, to find out what he's going to do now. So that might be interesting.
Yeah, that crossed my mind too. I wondered where Eddie Butler's going to land.
Yeah, no, I would hope with a decent pie, because he's actually quite a he's quite a good bloke, and quite a skilled guy too on what he does.
Does anyone else think there's something fishy about Anne-Marie landing with PA?
Well, I haven't. Did she actually like endorse PA?
That's what I saw. Yeah, it's like there's a picture of her with a megaphone with a PA sticker on it. I presume it's not photoshopped, but
is that all you saw?
No. I saw some commentary on it that she'd endorsed PA. But
I'd be amazed if she did, because like Anne-Marie Waters avoided the JQ like the plague.
That's why that's one of the reasons why it surprised me. Yeah, but like I don't know.
And I mean, and also, of course, PA are not a political party. They're not registered as a political party, and won't get registered as a political party.
Yeah, like I said, mate, there's something fishy about that. It seems like containment or something. I can't quite put my finger on it, and I don't care enough to look into it. But
well, 555 in the chat says no. Anne-Marie Waters loathes Colette, which I thought she did, to be honest. So I don't know. I really don't know. I don't associate with Nazi LARPers because there's no point, and they're never going to get anywhere. So I just don't. That's my view on it.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Dosastic Dracer. She didn't. She attended a rally about rape gangs, and they handed her a megaphone. That might be where that comes from. Perhaps.
Okay. But even
that makes more sense.
But that said, she's a political animal, so to speak. And she's attended a PA conference, rally, whatever, and she's spoken at it. So there's an implicit endorsement there.
No, I don't think she did, Jobo. I think this was a anti, in inverted commas, grooming gang rally, and as Dogtastic Draco says in the chat, she clarified she wasn't endorsing them in a stream, but also said PA doesn't have power, the left do. So yeah, I reckon that's probably what was going on.
Fair enough.
I was not a huge Anne-Marie Waters fan. I like the fact that she liked dogs, and I like the fact that she supported the traditional British, very strong animal welfare rules. But she would only go in one direction with other stuff, which I was not so strong in favor of, shall we say? You know.
I'm just looking at viewing numbers on GB News.
Is it good? Bad?
The Farage stuff gets good views. Sort of 30k and above.
Yeah. Look, if Farage said he was going to set himself up as a rival to the Conservative Party on the real right of centre side, he would get an enormous amount of support, but I just don't know if he will.
Well, I mean, all he's got to do is step back into Reform UK, and he's got something ready built, waiting for him.
If he does, yeah.
If he does,
he's
not getting any younger.
No, exactly. If he's going to do it, he ought to go and go. Well, I mean, all right. I mean, you say he's not getting any younger, but relative to Joe Biden, he's like a youth. But yeah, I mean, okay, but yeah.
You got to remember with Farage, he's sort of already fought his long war. He might be reluctant at this point, having had that come through that victory, to get back into the daily grind of campaigning again. So I wouldn't hope too much that he's gonna do that.
Well, if he doesn't, Jobo, I don't know who the hell will, who's got any sort of grip with the British public, you know.
Yeah, he's got sort of no successor really to speak of.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, Mitch, anything to say on that?
Just can't say I think of anything now.
All right, let's move on, I guess, to the, in inverted commas, so-called, in inverted commas, Conservative Party leadership race. So far as I am concerned, the only people who can possibly win this race are Rishi Sunak, the Indian. What's her name? Maudland, Penny Maudland, and Liz Truss. And all of them are globalist, all three of them. One's an Indian, the other two are women. I detest all three of them. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, they're all terrible. The funny thing is, I think I remember looking into Rishi Sunak, and I mentioned some stuff on a previous episode. But yeah, he's a pretty dodgy character. I mean, he spent a long time working for a trust that is classed as a charity, but does no donating or charitable work of any kind, and essentially just helps companies like his new father-in-laws do hostile takeovers of other firms. Usually helping Indian companies take over British companies, I noted.
Look, Rishi Sunak is an Indian, not a British person. His wife, as far as I understand, is a multi-millionaire. And he's a greasy, vile banker. So I can't think of anything in his favor, really. And also, he was the first guy to really stab Johnson in the back. Not that I like Johnson, but I mean, traditionally, if you are the guy who stabs the prime minister in the back, you don't get elected to replace them. In the Conservative Party.
I've also had Liz Truss opened up a website like a month before Johnson resigned, saying like Liz Truss for the leadership of the Tory party. So I think she knew it was as well.
Rishi Sunak did as well, even earlier than that, like months beforehand. And apparently, Rishi Sunak trying to pressure Boris to resign had been going on for a while.
When Rishi Sunak was the guy as Chancellor, printing all the money, saying the lockdowns were good, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, basically.
He's a typical hollow man that happens to be Indian, isn't he? Like, have they got to the point where they're starting to talk about any policy differences with Johnson, or are they still just trying to? Still doing the platitudes?
They had a hustings on Conservative Home, but I'll be honest, I couldn't be bothered to watch it. It's just
I kind of sped through it, and like there was paper thin differences between all three of them.
Right.
Yeah, like the most energetic talking points I had was talking about taxes. There was no mention of mass immigration whatsoever.
None whatever. No, none whatever. I have heard that Penny Mordaunt, who has been claiming she worked for the Royal Navy, and I thought had worked for the Royal Navy. Apparently, these days, senior officers of the Royal Navy are saying no, she didn't, and not really, and she's vastly exaggerating how much time she spent with the Royal Navy. So I would say that for anyone who cares about the British Armed Forces, Penny Mordaunt is apparently a liar. So there you go. And also, I mean, apart from the fact Penny Mordaunt is also, she absolutely slagged off Roger Scruton as an old-fashioned, vile man, when I think most Conservatives think Roger Scruton was a good bloke. She slagged off Dad's Army as being absolutely sexist, racist, and all the rest of it, when I don't know any British person who thinks that. And the foreword to Penny Mordaunt's book was written by Bill Gates, who every sensible man in the world detests and hates. So I'm not a big fan of Penny Mordaunt.
And it was endorsed by Tony Blair.
Well, I even triple what I said before, Armour. But then, of course, we also have Liz Truss, who is geographically challenged, shall we say, because she doesn't know where Russia is, and also wants to start a war with Russia with the absolutely tiny armed forces that the British government these days has control of. That are
And that she's
ridiculously
endorsed
tiny.
making more cuts to.
Yeah, absolutely. She's actually said, let's cut the British army by another 10,000 men, but let's still go to war with Russia.
I'm pretty sure I saw that the UK is going to drop below their 2% NATO
Mate,
treaty obligation.
They dropped below it ages ago. They just keep changing the rules to pretend they're keeping up with it. Like these days, British defence spending includes all military, naval, and air force pensions, and that's probably about a third of it, to be honest with you.
Pensions,
all included in so-called every year British defence spending. Puffwagon makes a good point in the chat. I've seen people saying Penny Mordaunt's quite cute, a blob in a swimsuit. Yeah, if she might be quite cute if she lost about 30 pounds. For God's sake. She's also not a mother, not a wife, and so therefore not really a woman. Because, like, what are women for? Being mothers and wives, really.
So a lot of these primary races or leadership contests, they've got a bunch of people that are positioning for future races or cabinet level type positions. So who are the two or three that are really in the frame for this? I've got Sunak.
The only people who are going to win, Jobu, the only people who are going to win will be Sunak, probably, versus Mordaunt and Truss. So it's an Indian bloke versus two white liberal women. And I say liberal women because that's what they are. They're not conservatives in any way, shape, or form. There's
only one other white person in the runnings, which is that Tom Tugan, whatever.
Who is actually half French.
Yeah. So not white. And it doesn't count.
And in any case, he's going out at the next Tory Party MP ballot.
Yeah, Kemi Badenoch seems quite popular.
I hear all these people loving this. I think she's a West Indian woman or whatever. I see all these right wing people, like including on John's Discord, etc., loving her. And to me, like the idea you're going to be saved by a somehow an inverted commas based black woman is ridiculous. But
Farage has actually come out and said he supports Sula Braverman, which is, I think, the last one.
Too late. She's gone.
Has she gone now?
Yeah, I think Braverman's gone. So that was too late. But Braverman, and what people thought was that Braverman's votes would go to this Kemi woman, but they didn't. Like many of them went to Truss. So, I know I've said from the start of this, I said before the first round of the election, this election will end up, what's going to be put to the ordinary Conservative members will be Rishi Sunak, the detestable Indian banker, versus two liberal white women. One of two liberal white women, either Mordaunt or Truss. And those, all of them are vile, all three of them. No, I couldn't possibly
say any
was better than another.
I think their modern model for the Tory party going forward is going to be a white woman in charge, and then they're going to backload the party with like Brahmin Indians.
Yep, totally agree. Or Pakistanis, of course. But yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Or Africans. I mean, I see people in some of the discords I'm in chatting around saying, "Oh, this West Indian woman who apparently is based, who I don't believe for a minute is, she'll be a future British Prime Minister." Well, hopefully I'll be dead by then, I hope. But anyway, you know, Anglo-Celtic people should be British Prime Ministers and nobody else.
Made my views clear on the based Indian man. Well, I was interested to see Jacob Rees-Mogg has sort of arisen from his slumber and started throwing haymakers at Sunak. So,
Yeah.
His voice has been missing in UK politics the last couple of years while he's been doing
Well,
solidarity.
partly like cabinet responsibility, and partly because he's a bit disappointing, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's not going to save you. He's one of those guys that they're good in opposition because he can criticise everything, but in terms of actually getting anything based done, no chance.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing's a disaster as far as I'm concerned, and it should turn. It should turn all British people off the so-called Conservative Party, in my opinion.
Well, one silver lining in having Sunak win the position is he's not going to be around for long because from what I can see, the UK Conservatives are following the Australian model and they're going to go over a cliff at the next election. If they think that the red wall's going to vote for a Paki, I don't think so.
No, they're not. They're not going to vote for an Indian. Absolutely correct. Nor would they vote for this whatever her name is, African woman. But yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Of course, it's not. But at the same time, all three candidates standing for the leadership of the Conservative Party are globalists, and the differences between all three of them are like paper thin at best. There's really not much. Mitch Atman, what are you reckon about
that? Is there anything to reckon?
Well, I mean, am I wrong? Is there a big difference between any of those three candidates in their actual policies? Because I don't think there is.
No, of course not. I mean, we haven't really even heard any policies, but we know what they're going to be like. I mean, I mean, this is one of the things where I kind of think anyone that was still willing to talk about immigration is probably someone worth keeping an eye on, because they know they haven't got to talk about it anymore. This has been one of the things they've been pushing a lot over the last couple of years. If you go and listen, as I have sometimes done, to like their podcasts, these sort of podcasts that get like 300 views on these really weird think tank YouTube pages and websites,
and Conservative Home and all this.
And Bright Blue and all of that sort of stuff.
I watched some of those. Yeah.
They openly call to just stop talking about immigration. They say if we just stop discussing it with these people, the problem will go away. The problem obviously being that we talk about it, not the immigration problem itself.
And to say nothing of the poor little schoolgirls who are being raped. But
well, they don't care. They just don't care.
Of course, no, those guys don't care about that in the least. I
mean, not to Fed Post, but I'm not even sure if half these people are even human beings anymore. But and they seem to be in that position now where the Tories have got a huge majority. There's no one else to vote for. They've got enough power that they can basically shut down, anything that dissents broadly in any great numbers.
And they do nothing. They do nothing practical or good. Nothing.
No. Well, they actively do everything bad, but so there's work to be done essentially.
Yeah, don't disagree with that. Mitch?
I'm not really invested in this whole leadership contest, to be honest. It's just a massive black pill journey just to look at them and just think that any of these could be prime minister, but they're not really talking about anything vaguely good. Like, I mean, they'll spur each other of each other's tax policies. Like, that's where we're at, as opposed to immigration policy. So it's just
God's Own Prototype said, what about the final census figures? Do we know when we're even getting those?
As late as possible if the Conservatives have got anything to do.
I saw one document saying, like, I think he said like provisional results or something like that. Or I can't remember, but he said like November time they would be released.
Right.
Well, so long after this leadership election, of course. But also, I did see Muhammad is by far the most popular British, in inverted commas, Christian name.
as it has been for several years, but of course they used to
con it by using the different versions.
Yeah, they used to say, oh, it's spelt different ways. But then, of course, what's that term? Celebration parallax. They would say the Muhammad thing doesn't count, but then they would turn around and celebrate diversity by saying that curry is England's favourite dish, even though curry just means gravy and it describes literally dozens of different dishes.
Look, my grandfather used to make curry. He learned how to make it when he served in India as a British soldier in between the wars. So it's strange to say, you don't have to have loads of Indians in Britain for Britons to eat curry.
Yeah, now we've got the recipes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah, look, I'll just get more and more insulting about the Conservative Party the longer I go on. But yeah, Penny Mordaunt is apparently lying about how much service she did with the Royal Navy. And senior Royal Navy officers are now saying that. But I'm also somewhat concerned as to why senior Royal Navy officers are even saying anything about a British election. And maybe because everyone wants Truss. And I mean, of course, if Truss becomes British Prime Minister, we may end up in a war with Russia that we can't possibly win. And whilst Russia will end up losing St. Petersburg and Moscow, Britain will end up losing all of Britain because, we can land half a dozen nukes on Russia and certainly destroy their major cities. But, they can absolutely destroy the whole of the UK. And and people have said to me, and I totally agree, that if a nuke landed on London, I would regret the historic buildings, such few as are left. But I wouldn't care a shit about the people because almost none of them are real Anglo-Celtic people, and the few who are lefties, and I don't care about those scum.
Yeah, they're not Anglo-Celtic in spirit, so fuck them too.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't give a shit about that. By all means, land a nuke on London. I'd regret the old buildings, and that's about it.
Some people talking about Galloway in the chat.
That's a guy involved in Scotland, so I'm not going to get involved with that. And
George Galloway is sort of he talks about Britain overall, doesn't he?
Sometimes, but he is in Scotland, I think, isn't he?
Doesn't he also stand with Muslim communities though a lot?
Yeah,
loves him. He absolutely loves him. But that's because he's a unironic anti-Semite, old Galloway.
Some kind of redeeming feature.
I think that might be a bit of a case in which thing, But...
I don't know. I mean, I'll take pro-English Jews, and I'm not a big fan of Muslims, I've got to say. But
with George Galloway, his party's like Workers' Party of Britain, and I haven't really kept tabs on him, but I saw one tweet which UKIP has shared a while back where it was like George Galloway was talking about how mass immigration affects like workers' wages. So I definitely think is more to the right on culture stuff than a lot of people were given credit for. Given that he is like full on like Labour, like socialist, like Tony Benn type.
Yeah, I mean, my view, a bit like Lee Ham is saying here in the chat, like, I'm entirely neutral in Israel. Israel is not a British ally. She's not a British enemy. She's just a neutral country who I don't give a shit about. But you're almost not allowed to take that position anymore, you know? You have to somehow be pro-Israel. I'm not pro-Israel. I don't give a shit about Israel. If Israel wants to keep the Golan Heights, let loads of Israelis go and die for it. If Israel wants to do something about Iran, let loads of Israelis go and do that. I'm not in favor of Brits doing it at all.
Then you need to cut them out of the political system, by and large.
I'm not sure. Like in America, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely more of an issue in America.
Yeah, the Israeli lobby has a very big influence in America. I think the Israeli/Jewish lobby in Britain has a much lesser influence, to be honest. And even the Jewish British MPs are less pro-Israel in Britain than they are in America.
I mean, when it comes to that sort of thing, I mean, yeah, it's a big problem in America. I think over here, it's like what? Like, you get Charlie Kirk who says, like, oh, Israel is our greatest ally, and he says that every single week, at least. Whereas over here, I mean, the only time I've ever heard that line uttered is by Daniel Hannan back in, like, 2017 or something.
Yeah, a long time ago, yeah. And Daniel Hannan, of course, is actually really South American, not British. But yeah. So yeah, I look. That's my view on that stuff. I said, I don't give two shits about Israel one way or the other, and that's why I don't go on constantly about the JQ. Do I think they have a bit too much influence in things like the media and banking? Yeah, sure.
I think academia is probably the biggest one actually in the UK.
Oh yeah, also academia for sure. No, I'm not going to dispute that. But is it absolutely overwhelming in the UK? No, I don't think it is. And I know I'm also not one of these people who is a desperate, like, victim of this relatively small group, you know? So no, I don't go along with that on the whole. I have other issues with stuff. I certainly think the Holocaust has been vastly exaggerated in the West for political reasons. And not so much in numbers, by the way, more in
that it didn't happen. Yeah, we know.
Yeah, no. It absolutely did happen. You can talk to Jewish people who will say it was like not as big as like 6 million. I know.
Didn't Netanyahu say it was a lot less than that?
That wouldn't surprise me actually, because Netanyahu, in some ways, was relatively based. But yeah, I have seen Jewish people say it was less than that. But yeah, millions of people were killed. Of course they were, and because many of them were women and kids, absolutely, I'm against it. I'm against any large numbers of women and kids of any group anywhere being killed. Not in favor of it, you know. I'm an Englishman, for God's sake, and most Englishmen will defend women and children. It's kind of what we're brought up to do, is it not?
Sometimes I think we're a little bit soft on outsiders.
Yeah, but even so, Alman, I'm pretty sure that like a whimpering Hindu or whatever woman and two little kids would not find you willing to chop their heads off. You know, I don't think you'd do that.
No.
And in fact, I think you'd probably protect them. So you know, and so would I. Even though I don't like I don't like all these foreigners in the UK at all. but I would still like protect individuals because it's kind of how my dad brought me up, you know. You don't kill women and kids, you just don't. And yeah, was there bollocks going on in World War II with the Germans and also with the Soviets, of course? Yes, there was, all over the fucking place. But the Brits, by and large, didn't do that, you know? Not saying there weren't one or two bad Brits who did bad things, because of course there were, always. But
I think the bombing campaigns are the main sort of stain in that.
up to a point, but like, you know, the Germans started it. You know, yes, they did. The Germans,
because this is something I've had trouble getting to the bottom of, is like the timeline of city bombings. Exactly.
It's called the Blitz, Adam.
Yeah.
It's called the Blitz, mate.
He knows that. He knows that. No, in World War One, the Germans started bombing London. First of all, with Zeppelins, and then with Gotha and other bombers.
And at the outbreak of World War II, they bombed Warsaw.
And also, what's that town in the Netherlands?
Rotterdam,
yeah, absolutely. They bombed Warsaw, they bombed Rotterdam. And before that, of course, they bombed many places in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. And then they started bombing London and other places. Now, all right, originally the Germans were trying to bomb the London docks. But what happened, and, you know, my family lived in that part of the world. My dad's house was bombed flat during the Blitz in 1940. But luckily, they were all in the air raid shower. But the only thing they could recover from their bombed place was an old-fashioned flat iron that you heated on a stove, you know, to iron your trousers and so on. But what I'm trying to say is the Germans were bombing London, and originally they were aiming for things like the London docks. But because the RAF were pretty successful in shooting down German bombers in daylight raids, they then went to night bombing. And as soon as you go to night bombing in 1940, when there are no navigational aids or anything, the only thing you can hit is a city, basically. And of course, they were soon bombing civilian houses, etc. And all right, Winston Churchill said, okay, the Germans have bombed London, we're going to go and bomb Berlin. But of course, in 1940, the RAF could send a tiny number of bombers towards Berlin relative to the numbers the Germans could send from the coast of France into UK.
To be fair, though, our crews were better, though, generally.
Yeah, but even
when you consider the size of the operations, we did a lot more damage, you could say, to keep
but I mean, even in 1940, the end of 1942, when they did the first bombing survey, most RAF bombs were not landing within 10 miles of their target.
No. Because, but I mean, all bombing back then was just so notoriously inaccurate. But
yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, one of the things that always kind of pissed me off is when people will bring up like the number of deaths in Dresden versus Coventry, and they'll say that this isn't tit for tat, and it's like, well, I mean, you can't really hold it against them for being better bombing crews.
Yeah, and more bombers with heavier loads. Like, had the Germans had that number of crews with bigger bombers and heavier loads, then Coventry would have suffered just as much. But the Germans absolutely did start it. It wasn't the British.
Right.
The thing about the Dresden thing is, like, it's pushed out there by anti-social, anti-British people. That's just their vector of attack. You know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't that, it'd be something else. But
it's an excuse to slag off. Oh, the Brits were at least as bad as the Germans. Because look at Dresden.
Yeah, and in other circles, it always gets paired with the eternal Anglo meme and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. Not true.
City bombing's been going on since catapults and trebuchets, guys. Like, I don't think there's anything new under the sun here. Look, from a personal point of view, the Dutch side of my family ended up in Japanese concentration camps in World War II, and it split the family apart. So I'm quite glad that we fucking dropped 2 bombs on them. And if I had my way, I'd drop another one on them to avenge my nana. So, I don't feel any guilt over that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, but you even today, you get like people telling me, "Oh, Japan was going to surrender, but the Americans dropped 2 bombs on them." Japan was not going to surrender before those 2 bombs.
Yeah.
They were not.
No chance. They were a death cult, basically. So, yeah, no.
Even
surrender.
after those 2 bombs, you can watch quite good Japanese movies about this. Even after those 2 bombs, there were Japanese officers who tried to do a coup to say, "No, we're not going to surrender."
Yeah, the Americans made absolutely like thousands and thousands of Purple Hearts because they thought they were going to have to land and take Japan by force.
And Adam, and don't forget, Britain had promised and would have provided 1/3 of the forces that were going to invade Japan.
Yeah.
Which everyone, of course, always forgets these days.
I mean, the thing about Japan was they surrendered largely after the Soviet invasion of Manchuria because they thought the Soviets were going to invade and turn what was left of Japan into a communist hellhole, essentially.
Very sensible of the Japanese. But yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, don't forget, before the atom bombs on Japan, the Americans had been firebombing Japan with incendiaries for like a year and a half. And many of the old-time Japanese buildings were basically wooden paper. So they burnt like a fucking Roman candle.
Just a little factoid you might appreciate, Duke. I think it was Kyoto or Osaka, which is sort of next to each other. But that's one of the few cities there that still has a lot of those old buildings because that wasn't firebombed during the war because one of
Kyoto, I think it is.
Yeah, the old imperial capital, because one of the high-ranking US Air Force generals spent his honeymoon there and didn't want to see that destroyed. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have few sympathies with the Japanese in World War. I like the modern Japanese quite a lot, but I have few sympathies with them in World War II, to be honest with you. They did not behave at all well to Allied prisoners of war.
It's worth the trip to go to Hiroshima if you're in the area, guys. It's quite spooky being under where the fucking bomb went off. But
I mean, one could say the same for Chernobyl.
Yeah, you're not going to catch me there, mate.
Yeah, no, I can see all of that. I mean, look, like I said, I'm quite fond of the modern Japanese. I was quite sad when the ex-Japanese Prime Minister the other day was assassinated.
I mean, I expect you'll be pleased that. So apparently, look, for the Japanese budget, they're not going to cast a ceiling on how much they spend on the army. So it looks like the Japanese armed forces are going to get revved up like massively to combat the Chinese.
The Japanese Navy is already considerably bigger than the British Royal Navy. Already. So, yeah, they're going to end up with a fucking strong Navy.
I mean, when you live next to China, I think having a strong military is like paramount, really. But yeah.
Absolutely. And that was the reason that the assassinated Japanese Prime Minister had said several times that Japan should defend Taiwan. It wasn't particularly that he cared about Taiwan. It's just that Japan knows damn well, because China hates them like with an absolute fierce hatred, that when and if China manages to take Taiwan, Japan will be next on their list. And the next one after Japan will be Australia, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's one sad note for Japan is let's say America collapses under Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, whatever, like, because he's going to decline to a point where they can't protect their interests in the Far East. You just think, what's going to happen to Japan when America's unable to help them?
I think I might be wrong, Mitch, but I am fairly convinced that if China attacks Taiwan, if we can all stop being stupid about the most corrupt nation in the world, Ukraine, and like stop supporting that shit, and let Russia just do what they're going to do, because we can't stop them anyway. What I hope and think will happen is that if China attacks Taiwan, I honestly think there'll be a naval and air war, a mostly naval and air war against China. And China might win, but I doubt it just now. If they wait another 10 years, then maybe they will win. But if they do it now, they might not.
I mean, I've heard like China's making a lot of noise about Taiwan. Like, I can imagine they're looking at the Russian war in Ukraine and taking their lessons off that and applying them to Taiwan, so that when they actually do invade, it won't just be some massive clusterfuck. It will just be.
I don't know what lessons you can take from fighting a war in an absolutely enormous landlocked country to attacking an island. I don't think there are that many, to be honest.
The other thing about sorry, mate. Just quickly, the other thing about the Ukraine conflict too is it's not bleeding us militarily; it's bleeding us financially from a budget sense. But
it's bleeding us also, Jobu, from war stocks of weapons.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens, I guess.
I'm going to have to leave you guys to it because I need to get up early. So
no worries, Adam, and thank you very much
wish you
for
all a good
joining the
night.
stream, mate.
Talk to you later.
Go on, mate.
See you, buddy.
555 in the chat says it'd be easier to attack Australia than Japan. No, it wouldn't. Australia is far further away from China than Japan is, and also enormous. And most of the middle of most of the middle of Australia is either desert or semi-desert. So that's not true 555, to be honest.
I mean, I'm just thinking, let's say Australia was successfully invaded by the Chinese. Still, you can imagine the Australians, knowing full well what Australia is like, you can imagine they'll use guerrilla warfare quite well-handedly.
No, I can't see that at all, actually. I think most Australians will surrender immediately. Some won't, but many will. But the problem China would have is, like, if you land in the north of the country, which is the closest bit to China, it's quite difficult to go anywhere else because you've got few roads and railways, and the whole middle of the country is desert. And most of the area surrounding that middle is semi-desert. So they wouldn't find it that easy, to be honest. And like I said, Japan is far closer to China than Australia is. So, yeah. I
mean, with Japan, I don't know what to think about Japan. Because on one hand, I mean, I wonder if like Shinzo Abe's warnings about China will rev them up to actually start not instead of like being like weebs who have a low birth rate, instead become like what they were 100 years ago. Not in terms of brutality, but you get what I mean, like more martial compared to what they are currently.
I've only seen the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force, which is what they call their navy, which, as I said, is bigger than the Royal Navy, the British Royal Navy already. And those guys seem pretty competent, and they have some damn good warships, to be honest.
Yeah, so I think that's the only thing I've got against Japan. Really, is its really low birth rate, which, to be fair, is higher. It's higher than the Chinese birth rate, but if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I think Japan's birth rate is the highest in East Asia, which it doesn't really take much for that.
But at least Shinzo Abe at least said we are not going to take refugees in inverted commas or migrants because Japan has enough internal problems, and Japan needs to solve its own problems before it starts taking people from overseas. Now, if only any British Prime Minister would turn around and say something like that. If only.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to burden the stream with like the different takes that different ways had on his death, but yeah, I mean, there's like very conflicted stances over that immigration thing with Shinzo Abe, because there's some people who say that he wanted mass immigration for Japan to deal with birth rate, but then there's also people who say, well, Shinzo Abe did try and like tell people to have more kids, pretty much.
He did. Yes, he did. Absolutely, he did. Yeah. Which again is more than any Western leader has done.
The talk about Japan's problems, they do have some, are vastly overblown. Like, Japan is paradise on earth for the Japanese. Japan's the model that I'd like to see implemented in Australia and places like that, to be honest.
Absolutely, Joe. Absolutely.
They don't like whitey there. They're not going to accept fucking Africans, mate, let me tell you. The only Africans I saw were in Shinjuku, and they were running the sex trafficking Filipino thing for the Yakuza. That's all they're allowed to do. So
yeah.
I mean, Japan's got like
Japan is like 98% plus Japanese.
Yes, they've got Koreans in their country who they despise. So I don't think they're going to allow Indian computer programmers in their country or anything like that.
Why should they? Given that like there are loads of Japanese computer programmers.
I mean, I once saw an article like a few years ago where he said it's like Japanese minister or something. I don't think it's actually got carried out as a government policy or anything, but like you get this whole like this one minister who said Japan should have loads of Pakistani computer programmers or something because our birth rate is so low or something like that. But yeah.
Arbase, I can't remember the exact wording, but Arbase said something like, in regards to whether or not he should let in refugees, or quote unquote refugees, was Japan is for the Japanese, like it's the only place in the world that's for the Japanese people. He sees himself as the leader of the Japanese people and not anyone else. So.
Yeah, once again, if only any British leader would say something like that. If only. If only.
Yeah, I can agree with Job. I mean, let's face it, Japan is... I mean, with the exception of the birth rates, there's not really much in the way of problems with Japan. I mean, there's also work...
Yeah, but Mitch, the point I'm trying to make to you is this. Like, Japan has falling birth rates like the West, but Japan has not taken the Western solution, which is to import people from every shithole in the third world. That is the difference, basically.
Yeah, I mean, look on the topic, I'm going to end up diving so much, but essentially, like, the only two problems they really are for Japan is low birth rates, which, again, Shinzo Abe has done something about, unlike our leaders or do over here. And secondly, their work culture where it's like work to the drop dead. But aside from that, I mean, that's the other thing.
Do you know what? I wish Britain had a work till they drop dead culture rather than British politicians turning around and saying, oh no, we have to import people because British people won't do those jobs, which I think is a lie anyway.
I mean, in Japan, it gets so bad. You get situations where, let's say you have a Japanese bloke who's in his early 40s, who's focused so much on his work life that he's still a virgin, that he's still not married, not had kids or anything like that. That's works with their job culture.
No, that's not traditional. That has been pretty recent.
That's my whole point. Is like with Japan, they have that sort of. It's only really post-war. It's only really a thing with like American consumerism and capitalism and whatnot in Japan. It's not really a thing which they had like 100 years ago.
Yeah, I get that in Japan the corporate culture is that people have to work long hours. I get that, but UK people in corporate culture work long hours. The difference is they have to work alongside umpteen women, and by the way, feminism is a very small deal in Japan compared to the West. I mean, and also in Britain, you'll end up working alongside Pakistanis and West Indians and Nigerians and every other fucking shithole in the world that Britain wants to import.
I mean, we do have like feminism, BLM in Japan, but the thing is, the Japanese are very...
They are tiny.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the Japanese, they're not people who like loud people, shall we say? So those sort of people, they're just shunned. Like,
there are tiny little feminist groups. There are tiny little Japanese in favor of immigration groups, but they are minuscule. Even feminism in Japan is actually a very small deal.
Yeah.
The only if you follow Japanese channels on YouTube like I do, the only Japanese channels that support feminism are Japanese channels basically based in the West, not in Japan.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've got anything else to say about Japan, to be honest.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Okay. I think Dostastic Draco is correct. That he's talking about Japan. They have problems by normal society standards, but I'd swap our problems for theirs. Yeah, me too. In a second, actually.
Yeah, like
Japan
I said,
has,
go on,
yeah.
mate, sorry. No, go on.
No, you carry on.
I was going to say, for all of that, they've got the safest, cleanest streets I've ever seen. So, and they recognise each other as an in-group and keep our groups in their place. So, yeah, like I said, Japan's the model.
Totally right, mate. Totally agree. Don't disagree with that one bit. Anything last minute to say, Mitch?
Nah, can't say I got anything.
Anything you want to plug? Mitch, anything you want to plug?
Nah, can't say. I mean, aside from like stuff I'd chill in the Discord server, but like nothing of like mine personally, no.
Okay, Mitch, for anyone who's in Discord, and not just my Discord, I think he's in others, posts a lot of stuff about the Russians winning in the Ukraine, which they absolutely are. But anyway, Jobu, anything you want to plug, mate?
I'd like to raise my Gab account from more than 30 followers. So if anyone wants to get here and subscribe, I'd appreciate that. But besides that, nothing much, mate.
All right, Jobu, if you send me your Gab account in the Discord, I'll stick it in the description if you like.
I was joking, but yeah, I'll do that, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, all right, no worries. Excuse me, guys. Too much smoking. Yeah, all right. 555 saying sexual perversion doesn't necessarily destroy society because they are sexual perverts. I suspect he's talking about the Japanese.
Jake?
I'm not sure if the Japanese are really particularly sexual perverts, but yeah.
I mean,
they have a slightly different view on this stuff to Western Christians. But on the other hand, I had a row with a bloke on my Discord a week ago because some bloke was doing a demonstration of traditional Japanese bondage stuff on a fully clothed woman, and this bloke said, the Japanese are terrible. Well, I'm not feminist, so I don't care if people do that sort of thing, but that's just me, you know. So long as the woman's happy with it, I don't care.
I mean, the furthest I've heard about Japan on that score is like they've got like there's obviously one Japanese thing where they've got like a penis festival or something. But aside from that,
yeah, they do lots of stuff like that, but that's merely the fact that they're not Christians society.
yeah.
And speaking as an agnostic, I don't really care, to be honest. But you know, whatever.
I mean, we're talking of a society where teenage girls will commit suicide if, say, they dishonor the family. So it's not like sexual perversion is a thing there.
Well, I mean, look, what would you sooner have? Would you have a Japanese society where they do? I can't even remember what it's called now. I do know because I can do it. But I would sooner have a society where you can do bondage on a woman, rope bondage on a woman who agrees to it, than where you can get hold of a little toddler and change their sex or send them into a gay nightclub. I know what I think's more degenerate, and it ain't doing rope bondage on a woman who is agreeing to do it. To be honest,
I mean, I don't know anything about the particular Japanese practice, so I couldn't really, I wouldn't really know enough to compare. But based off how you framed it, like I would go for the Japanese option. Like I wouldn't. I mean, you couldn't really empirically support the West in terms of its social attitudes towards anything really at this
these
point.
days you can't. We're insane. Like we abort babies by the million. And a feminist mother is allowed to turn a toddler into a little girl, in inverted commas. We have tranny story hour, and we allow little kids of like 6 and 7 into gay strip clubs. We can't, in the West, talk about anyone else's morals these days. It's just not possible because we're insane.
So like when you like look at the stuff in exactly the way you phrase it there, you can see why most people hate to the West just call countries like America, like the Anglosphere or like the West in general, the great Satan. To be fair,
Yeah, absolutely, I can. Absolutely, I can. I mean, you got little kids of like 6, 7, 8, 9 being taught in school about gay sex and LGBTQ stuff. And little kids of that age are innocent and don't need to know about sex at all. They're just too small.
so like yeah, I remember seeing like a story which I didn't really think was a big thing, but yeah, I remember it was like the prime minister or president of Kyrgyzstan, don't know what, but like the president of Kyrgyzstan was pretty much the American ambassador went up to him and said, "Okay, can you start some like drama with Russians or something about them not being kind to gay people in Kyrgyzstan?" And Kyrgyzstan just went, "Okay, your country has school shootings and drag queen story hour. Don't preach to us about morality when your country is that dysfunctional."
Totally right. I mean, you all know, Mitch, because you do all this stuff about the war in Ukraine. The Ukraine, which the United Nations, like Globo Homo A number 1, called the most corrupt nation in the world. And the Ukraine is one of the centers in the world for like the sex slave trafficking stuff, where young girls get sent overseas to be prostitutes. And it is the center in the world for the babies for cash trade, where like a gay couple can go and buy a baby. And this is what the West is fighting for.
Yeah, I mean, I've also heard about. I've heard, paradoxically, you've got the Ukrainians ready to legalize same-sex marriage, or at least they're considering it, because there's a lot of homosexuals in the Ukrainian army.
They already have, as far as I can understand.
Well, then you've got Russia, which is doing like doing this
anti-gay. The opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just you just sat there thinking, as like a Western right wing, you sat there thinking, you're really spoiled for choice there, aren't you? You can really simp for the Ukrainians when, let's face it, your average Ukrainian bloke, so let's say average Ukrainian bloke from Lvov or Kiev, whatever you want to call it, they might be like socially conservative, but the thing is, the beast will inevitably turn them gay. It's not the same with Poland. Like Poland,
or if not them, their children or their grandchildren, for sure. That's the aim.
Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, I understand Ukrainians have bad blood towards Russia because, I mean, to be fair, it's Eastern Europe. I mean, everyone has bad blood against each other there. But let's face it, if you were Ukrainian, what would you simp for? The Russians, who, let's face it, they've got their problems with, say, corruption, but they don't go about with drag queen story era.
Relative to Ukraine, Russia's corruption is quite small scale. Relative to Ukraine, I mean, is it not true that the HIMARS systems that these multiple rocket launch systems the Americans sent to the Ukrainians, the Russians already had one that was sold to them by corrupt Ukrainians?
I know it was like Caesar SPGs from France, which are French generals protesting.
Yeah, I knew about that, but like the most recent one is now the Russians have a fully operational HIMARS system that they can re-engineer and like work out everything about it.
I mean, to be fair, like so the Russians have got their own what is called the Smerch system, which is actually outranges a HIMAR, and is actually
I know the Russians have loads of multiple launch rocket systems.
And secondly, I mean, I haven't reported about it on the Discord because I've not really seen any evidence. If like the Russian arms company Ural Vagonzavod posts about it, whatever, then I'll post about it. But I mean, I'm just wondering. Let's say it's true that the Russians have actually got their hands on the HIMAR.
It seems pretty certain from the stuff I've seen online.
Like, all I would say is, how would the corrupt officers in general that sold it to the Russians, how would they be able to explain that HIMAR disappearing?
They'll just say got captured.
So, because you got to think, first of all, it's a long-range rocket system that can do like up to.
Yeah, but hang on, Mitch. The Americans told the Ukrainians not to use it against Russian territory, and the very first thing the Ukrainians did was train it on a Russian town to kill Russian civilians.
Yeah,
first thing they did.
Yeah, because even that Americans transgender abomination that called for Gonzalo was
God,
dead.
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Disgusting thing.
Yeah, that thing even said, the HIMARS in Sumy Oblast, that's where the HIMARS bombard Russian territory from.
Yeah.
They've said like Russian intelligence has found out where it is. So at the very least, it will be knocked out, if not captured. But again,
as far as I understood it, like a week or ago, the Russians had already knocked out 2 or 3 of them. But there are now like reasonably authentic looking photographs showing an absolutely intact HIMARS system that the Russians have.
Yes.
And most people seem to think it was sold to them by the utterly corrupt Ukrainian people. You know, it's like Ukraine's a shell, man. I don't care who runs Ukraine. I really don't care. And Ukraine was Russian for the vast majority of its history.
Like on topic of Ukraine corruption, I mean, when you look at Telegram, you look at what Ukrainians are doing. They're selling off like their Kalashnikovs and grenades and and as well as NATO gear in general on the dock.
Yeah, they've been selling off anti-tank missiles. More seriously, from the point of view of anyone who ever gets on an airliner, they've been selling off man-pad systems. You know, these shoulder-fired anti-aircraft systems that America and Britain has been giving them. Those things are all over the black market, apparently.
Yeah, pretty much. Secondly, I mean, with Ukraine, I mean, again, it's like eastern and southern Ukraine is pretty much Russian territory. I mean, you look at the borders of Ukraine, but shouldn't have been drawn
100% agree with you. Right? Yeah.
You see, you look at the borders of Ukraine, they shouldn't have been drawn that way. That's the best way to put it. It's just, whereas, it's like Ukrainians in the Second World War, those who collaborated with the Nazis, they also spent their time genociding the Polish.
Well, one of their heroes was like a Nazi dude who fought with the German Nazis in World War II. Like there are statues of him.
Yeah, Stepan Bandera. There's also his second in charge by the name of Roman Shukevich, who is also celebrated. And there's even like Ukrainian children's books that celebrate that guy. However, in Poland, I forgot the password, but it was on Discord, but there was a bit of drama in Poland the ruling party, PIS or Law and Justice, they were pretty much saying to people, don't talk about what happened in World War II between us and the Ukrainians. Just don't talk about it. Choose your words carefully.
Because the Ukrainians killed a lot of Poles.
Yeah, and then you get the actual Polish people who are just like pissed off about it. Like they are just, you see them third person on Facebook about it, which you can't really blame them given the stuff. I mean, there's a film about it made in 2016, but I won't even share that in my Discord because it's so brutal. I think I get done for promoting violence if I try to share that movie on the Discord server. It's that brutal what the Ukrainians do.
Do me a favor, Mitch. DM it to me on Discord.
Yeah,
I won't put it up. I'd just like to see it.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, at least with like the Polish Ukrainian, I mean, at least that border's sorted because they did like a population exchange, whereas with Russia and Ukraine, we didn't do that. Well, there's 8 million Russians at least in Ukraine who, let's face it, I mean, you guys, it's like, I've heard rumors that I've seen videos where the Ukrainians in the Donbass, they're complaining about them being like their positions are always like photographed and shot taped to the Russians. And that's why Russian artillery is so deadly, because they've always got accurate intelligence on Ukrainian army positions. Because you get civilians in the Donbass, those who didn't leave, reporting to the Russian army, or at least their relatives in Russia, who then tell the Russian army that the Ukrainian army positions. So
do you watch Patrick Lancaster on YouTube?
Yeah, I've noticed he's been absent for a bit because
he has been away for a while, but like a week or something. But if you watch Patrick Lancaster, who's an ex-United States Navy dude who lived in the Donbass, in the Russian breakaway republics, everywhere he goes, he asks the people, who do you support? And invariably, with like no exceptions, everyone he asks says, oh no, we support Russia, we're Russians.
Yeah, I've seen like one video where there's a couple of women who are like elderly women, and that's the furthest I've seen where they say, but they blame both sides. But yeah. But you'd never see like someone who's pro-Zelensky. Now, fair enough, a lot of the pro-Ukrainians will have fled. But then again, a lot of those people who will have left the Donbass, they won't have gone to the west of Ukraine, but would have gone to, say, Kursk Oblast.
Look, I mean, as far as I can work out, all that's going to happen in Ukraine is eventually it's going to be cut off from the sea totally. If the Russians decide to take Odessa, the Ukrainians won't be able to stop them ultimately. And the Russians will, I don't know, go probably up to the Dnieper River. And you're going to end up with a rump Ukraine, which is demilitarized. I just don't understand what there is no way the Ukrainians can stop what the Russians are doing. Like they're far weaker now than they were 3 months ago.
Yeah, I just saw like 3 points. I think Russia should just annex all of Ukraine at this point, because let's say a rump Ukrainian state, that will be used as a springboard for any NATO
the Russians the Russians may do that, although I suspect it's more likely they'll leave a rump Ukrainian state for the actual Ukrainians rather than the Russians who the Ukrainians took over, you know?
I mean, if I was Putin, I would just take over all of Ukraine at this point, because, I mean, there's no way. They'd have to steamroll all the way to Lvov in the west, because Zelensky won't surrender. And I don't think any politician in Ukraine would actually surrender, because it's just it'll be politically dead. And let's face it.
Hang on. 555 in the chat says there's no audio. Guys, can you hear us or not in the chat?
I mean, I can hear you. And
I know. I can hear you for sure. But what I'm saying is, no, it's cool. It's all right. All right, guys, we're going to stop in. Sorry, Mitch, we're going to stop in 2 minutes. So finish up your point, and we'll call it a night.
Yeah. Essentially, so if I was Putin, I'd annex all of Ukraine at this point to hostiles to just simply be left on the vine. Secondly, I mean, what Brian Boris said about Ukraine being Polish, and yeah, that's what Ukrainian is like 50% Polish, 50% Russian. It depends on who you listen to over there, but yeah, it's pretty much like a mixed language between Polish and Russian.
Well, Eastern Ukraine is like quite heavily Russian, and so is southern Ukraine, as I believe you said, Mitch.
Yeah, eastern and southern Ukraine is they speak Russian there. I'm talking about like western Ukraine here, which is like which is like the language is like half Polish, half Russian. So both Poles and Russians can fairly understand Ukrainian a bit. It's not like it's kind of like Dutch being a mix of English and German. That's
I get it.
Yeah,
it's much more. Although Dutch is much more German than English.
Yeah,
I mean, like Germans can understand Dutch quite well, and vice versa.
I mean, if someone speaks Dutch to me, I won't probably understand it as much as if I see it written. That's probably where I'd say.
No, all right, fair enough. Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
But I mean, let's say 10% spoken, I can understand. Perhaps 30% at a push, I can understand in written.
I used to have enough Afrikaans, which is like baby Dutch, basically, to get by. But these days, I can't remember half of it, to be honest, because it was like 30 years ago now. So, sorry, 20 years ago. So,
But then again, I might be a bit scared because I'm learning German anyway, so that's probably why I know.
I suspect that would be the case, mate. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. You anything you want to plug or talk about? Because we're gonna quit now, mate.
No, I mean we've talked about Ukraine, so that's me all done.
Okay, I'm gonna play us out of a tune now, gents. Because the first one we played was a Irish tune from the days when Ireland was part of Great Britain. This one is going to be from Ulster. So there we go.
In the county Tyrone, near the town of Dungannon, where many's a ruction myself had a hand in, Bob Williamson lived, a weaver by trade, and as all of us thought him a stout orange blade. On the 12th of July, as it yearly did come, Bob played on the flute till the sound of the drum. You may talk of piano or fiddle or lute, but there's nothing could sound like the old orange flute. But this coming old cowboy, sure he took us all in, and married a papish called Bridget McGinn. Turned papish himself and forsook the old cause that gave us our freedom, religion and laws. Now the boys in the townland made some stir upon it, and Bob had to fly to the province of Connaught. He flew with his wife and his fixins to boot, and along with the rest went the old orange flute. At the chapel on Sundays by the priest's own desire, Bob took the old flute for to play in the choir. He took the old flute for to play in the mass, but the instrument shivered and sighed, oh alas. Bob jumped, humped and started and got in a splupper and dipped the old flute in the blessed holy water. But blow as he would could make no other sound, but the Protestant boys and no crockies died down. At a council of priests that was held the next day, they prepared to administer auto de fe. Sure, they couldn't knock heresy out of its head, so they bought Bob a new one to play in its stead. So the old flute was doomed and its fate was pathetic. 'Twas branded and burned at the stake as heretic. As the flames roared around it, they heard a strange noise. Was the old flute still playing the Protestant noise?
Okay, guys.
My father was an Ulster man, a Protestant.
All right, guys. That's the end of the stream for this evening. Don't forget to like the stream and please subscribe to the channel. And also check out our Odyssey channel, which you will find the link to in the description. And we'll see you next week. Go wild, gents.